Did you know there are certain debts you might never have to pay again? For many older adults, this realization is both surprising and deeply relieving. You may have spent years faithfully sending checks to debt collectors, believing you had no choice, when in reality the law often tells a very different story. Across the country, thousands of seniors continue handing over pieces of their limited retirement income to cover obligations that no longer carry any legal force. What makes it even more troubling is that many collectors are well aware of this, but still pressure people, counting on fear and confusion to outweigh knowledge. That's why today we're going to look at 6 specific types of debt that attorneys consistently warn older adults not to keep paying. These are debts where the law actually stands on your side, no matter how intimidating that voice on the phone might sound. I'll explain why these debts eventually lose their power, the traps that make so many seniors keep paying, and what steps you can take if collectors refuse to leave you alone. Each point is meant to replace fear with clarity and control, so if you've been lying awake worrying about debt draining your retirement, take a deep breath. You're about to discover 6 truths that could change the way you handle money from here on out. Let's dive in. For many seniors, medical bills are the heaviest burden. They've stacked up over the years, maybe from a surgery, a hospital stay, or even an unexpected trip to the emergency room. Every envelope in the mailbox feels like pressure, but here's what most people don't realize: medical debt doesn't last forever. Each state sets its own statute of limitations, the time frame during which a hospital, clinic, or collection agency can legally sue to collect payment. In some states, that period is as short as 3 years. In others, it might stretch to 6. But once the deadline has passed, the debt loses its legal bite. Collectors may keep calling, but legally, you don't have to pay. Many older adults worry that old medical bills might affect their Social Security, but the law offers important protections you should know about. The truth is, by federal law, Social Security benefits are shielded from most creditors. Hospitals and collectors cannot directly access that money, even if their messages sound frightening. Just knowing this fact can lift a huge weight. It separates the reality from the scare tactics. And in the end, it isn't only about protecting your bank account, it's also about protecting your dignity. Take Dorothy, for example. She's a 75-year-old widow who spent years sending hundreds of dollars every month toward a hospital bill from nearly a decade earlier. She felt trapped until she learned from a legal aid service that, in her state, the time limit on that debt had already passed. That one conversation completely changed her life. Dorothy realized she could have kept that money for medication and daily living instead of throwing it at an old debt that no longer had any power. So, if you're still getting collection calls about very old hospital or doctor bills, stop before you make another payment. Ask yourself, how old is this debt? Has the legal clock already run out? If the answer is yes, you may already be free. This isn't about refusing responsibility. It's about using the rights that exist to protect seniors who have already given so much. Once you see the situation clearly, you'll understand that not every bill showing up in your mailbox is actually worth your money. Now let's move on to another type of debt: credit cards. They can feel like a lifeline during tough seasons, but for many older adults, those balances linger long after the card itself has been cut up. What most people don't realize is that, just like medical bills, credit card debt also comes with a statute of limitations. Once that time limit runs out, the lender loses the legal authority to sue for repayment. Collectors may still send threatening letters or call your phone at all hours, but they're counting on fear and confusion to get you to pay. If the debt is what lawyers call time-barred, you don't legally owe them a dime. The trap many seniors fall into, though, is accidentally restarting the clock. In most states, making even a small payment or simply admitting the debt belongs to you can reset the statute of limitations. Suddenly, collectors can sue again, and you're back where you started. That's why it's so important not to panic when someone pressures you over the phone. Slow down, ask questions, verify how old the debt is, and remind yourself of your rights. Think about Walter, a 78-year-old retired bus driver. He was bombarded daily by collection agencies demanding payment for a credit card he had stopped using more than 15 years ago. They wanted thousands of dollars and warned him about lawsuits and even wage garnishment. But when he finally sat down with a legal aid clinic, he learned something shocking. The debt was already past the statute of limitations in his state. Once he stopped paying, the calls eventually quieted down and his Social Security stayed safe. That single piece of knowledge didn't just save him money, it gave him back peace of mind and a sense of control he thought he'd lost forever. If you're staring at old credit card bills, remember this: time can actually work in your favor. Debt collectors may push and pressure, but if they didn't take legal action within the allowed time frame, their power to sue is gone. You don't have to jump at every phone call in fear. The truth is, the law protects you more than you probably realize. If what you're hearing so far feels helpful, I'd love to know you're still with me. Go ahead and note that credit card debt is the second key point we've covered. And if you haven't already, please consider subscribing and hitting the notification bell. That way you won't miss the rest of these important insights. Your support makes it possible for us to keep creating content that both informs and encourages you. Now, let's move on to another debt many people misunderstand: student loans. A lot of folks believe they follow you to the grave, but the reality is far more nuanced. Federal student loans have their own strict rules, but certain private loans actually fall under the same statute of limitations as credit cards or medical debt. That means if you, or even your children, took out private loans years ago and they've been in default long enough, lenders may no longer be able to sue. Of course, that doesn't stop them from trying to scare or pressure you, but legally, once the window closes, the law is often on your side. Another big concern is what happens when the borrower passes away. With federal student loans, the debt is usually discharged at death. In many cases, private loans also vanish unless a spouse or child co-signed. Yet so many seniors worry their children will be stuck carrying that financial load. Unless your family is legally tied to the loan, the responsibility typically ends with you. Realizing this fact can erase a lot of needless guilt and worry. Take Frances, for example. She's an 83-year-old grandmother who spent years scraping together money for an old private student loan she once took out for a teaching certificate she never even used. She lived in fear that if she stopped paying, her grandchildren would inherit the debt. But after meeting with a nonprofit attorney, she learned two life-changing truths. The statute of limitations had already expired, and even if it hadn't, her grandchildren couldn't be forced to pay. That discovery finally freed her to stop draining her limited income and instead focus on her day-to-day needs. For so many older adults, the fear of leaving behind debt weighs heavier than the debt itself. But knowing that certain loans can expire and that most won't ever transfer to your children means you can stop living under a shadow that no longer has power. Walking away legally isn't just financial relief, it's emotional freedom too. Now let's talk about another category of debt that often lingers painfully in people's minds: personal loans. These are the small amounts once borrowed from a cousin, a neighbor, or a close friend. Seniors often carry guilt over not being able to repay, even if decades have passed. But here's the truth: unless those loans were written down in a formal agreement, or unless they were pursued legally within the statute of limitations, they are debts the law no longer recognizes. A handshake loan from 40 years ago can't be taken to court. Collectors may not be knocking on your door in these situations, but the heaviest burden is the guilt itself. Many replay old conversations in their heads, convinced they still owe something. But life happens: illness, job loss, unexpected bills, and the law has already closed the door on those old debts. Continuing to carry that guilt only robs you of the peace you deserve. Take Marjorie's story. At 81, she was still ashamed about $50 she borrowed from a church friend in the 1970s. That friend had long since passed away, yet Marjorie carried the weight as if she had failed in her duty. When her daughter finally explained that the debt was both legally and practically gone, Marjorie broke down in tears of relief. She realized she had carried unnecessary guilt for over 40 years about something that no longer mattered. As we grow older, it's important to remind ourselves that forgiveness isn't only for others, it's for us too. Letting go of old, unenforceable debts is part of giving yourself permission to live with joy in the years you still have. You've already given so much to your families and communities. You deserve to put down weights that the law has already erased. If this message resonates, let me know you're here by noting that personal loans are the fourth key point we've covered. And again, if you haven't subscribed yet, I encourage you to do so and hit the notification bell. Your support truly helps us keep sharing insights that matter. And now, let's turn to one of the most intimidating types of debt for seniors: medical bills. For many older adults, just opening that envelope in the mail can feel terrifying. Sometimes, just one hospital stay or an unexpected procedure from years ago can leave behind medical bills that pile up into something that feels impossible to ever pay off. What many older adults don't realize, though, is that medical debt is treated much like other consumer debt. It has a statute of limitations. Once that legal time window closes, usually after a set number of years depending on your state, those old balances can no longer be enforced in court. Hospitals and clinics often sell these unpaid accounts to third-party collection agencies. Collectors will call with urgency, warning of dire consequences if you don't pay immediately. Their words can cut deep, especially if you grew up believing every bill must be paid, no matter what. But here's the reality. Once medical debt has expired, it is legally uncollectible. No one can take your Social Security, seize your home, or deny you future medical care because of an old balance. Consider Dorothy, an 83-year-old widow. She once got a letter about an old hospital bill from 1998, asking for thousands of dollars she could never afford. After a single call with a senior legal counselor, she discovered the debt was far beyond its enforceable life. That one conversation gave her back peaceful nights and lifted a burden she thought would never go away. Seniors deserve to focus on protecting their present health, not punishing themselves for medical costs that the law has already closed the book on. Knowing your rights doesn't just save money, it restores your dignity. You've worked too hard for your security to let debts that no longer have power steal it away. Now, let's look at another common worry: household utility bills. Many older adults fear that unpaid electricity, gas, or water balances will automatically fall on their loved ones after they're gone. Collectors sometimes feed this fear by hinting that family members are responsible. But here's the truth: unless your children or spouse are listed on the account, the unpaid balance does not transfer to them. Utility companies may shut off service or close the account, but they cannot legally chase your survivors for the debt. Unfortunately, confusion often arises during times of grief. Families receive calls or letters suggesting they must pay in order to protect their credit or keep services running. In reality, a son or daughter is only responsible if they voluntarily take over the account, and even then, they're only liable for future charges, not what was owed before. Walter, age 79, spent his final years deeply worried that his children would inherit his overdue water bill. But after speaking with a local attorney, he learned the truth. His family could simply notify the utility company of his passing, and the account would be closed without passing on the balance. That knowledge lifted a huge weight off his shoulders, freeing him to spend his remaining time on what mattered most: his grandchildren. For those living on fixed incomes, here's the takeaway. Yes, services may stop if payments aren't made, but the debt itself ends with you. Collectors cannot chain your loved ones to obligations that were never theirs to begin with. That worry isn't yours to carry into the future. If you found this section helpful, let us know you're still here by noting that utility bills are the sixth key point we've covered. And if you haven't yet subscribed, please consider doing so and turning on the notification bell. Your support allows us to keep sharing insights that matter. The truth is, aging brings enough real challenges without adding unnecessary burdens from debts that legally no longer exist. From medical bills tied only to your name, to credit card balances long past their deadlines, to private student loans that disappear with the borrower, seniors are far more protected by law than many realize. Yet too often, older adults quietly keep paying collectors who have no legal claim or lose sleep over debts that have already expired. The most important truth to hold on to is this: you have rights. Understanding those rights can free you from years of needless stress. But beyond the legal protections, there's something even more valuable: the emotional release that comes when you finally let go. Too many seniors lie awake at night, thinking about old bills and broken promises, believing they must sacrifice food, medicine, or peace of mind to pay debts no longer enforceable. That is not how your later years should be lived. These years are meant for peace, dignity, and time with family. Knowing which debts you do not have to carry gives you back your independence and opens the door to a calmer, freer future. As you reflect on the 6 types of debts we've discussed, take a deep breath and remind yourself, not every bill that lands in your mailbox is truly yours to pay. Learning your rights lets you reclaim control, and setting down these unnecessary weights makes more room for what truly matters: your health, your loved ones, and the everyday joys of life. Thank you for spending this time with us. We'd love to hear from you. Share one insight you gained today and how you plan to use it in your own life. Your thoughts mean a lot to us, and reading them gives us encouragement to keep going. If you found today's information helpful, please like, subscribe, and share. Your support allows us to continue creating content designed to both inform and inspire. Thanks again for being here, and we look forward to connecting with you in the next discussion.